How do you know when it's time to make a change? How do you know when you're supposed to start learning new things and changing your habits and put down your freaking phone, drop some friends who are maybe a little bit toxic, and honestly, like, work on yourself? When is the right time? And how do we even work on ourselves? What does that mean? That definition, working on yourself, I feel like it has the connotation that you're broken, you're not a good person, or you don't have the right values, or you're not doing the right thing. And I don't think that's truly the case. In today's video, I want to talk about when is the right time to work on ourselves and how we can work on ourselves. Before we get into the video, I just wanted to welcome everyone new here. My name is Bridget. On this channel, you'll find me talk a lot about introverts and social anxiety, general mental health things, and just a whole bunch of stuff. So if you are into that, make sure you stick around, check out some of my other videos. Don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful or useful. Comment below what you'd like to see more from me, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. So let's get into the video. So I did a little pre-planning before this video, which, I mean, I usually do with every video. But this one in particular, I felt like I just had so much to say. There was so much to talk about. So I'm gonna like kind of summarize what I was planning in my head and wrote down and obviously practiced, because that's just me. One of the first things I want to just get started with is how we know when is the right time to start working on ourselves. And I guess I can really only talk about my experience. Like, I'm not a professional, so I can only talk about how it affected me when I noticed that I needed to really make changes. I think I'm really into self-help. Like, I'm one of those people that will probably, every other book I read is probably gonna be like somewhat self-helpy. But I think that's kind of, at least in my definition of what self-help is, it's like a little bit more broad. Tony Robbins, like, it's a little bit aggressive for me, and also Gary Vee. Like, it's a little bit, it's just not my cup of tea. But those are like typically, those kinds of people is what you hear a lot in like the self-help community. I also will probably throw on a podcast related to that kind of thing as well. So like some of my favorites are Unlocking Us with Brene Brown, We Can Do Hard Things with Glennon Doyle, which is like so good. Tim Ferriss, I will occasionally listen to. Joe Rogan, like, I wouldn't really consider him self-helpy, but like he talks about a lot of topics about bettering yourself. So I would still consider that kind of self-helpy. It really depends on the episode. Regardless, I'm blabbering. So I wasn't always like that. When I was younger, growing up, I was kind of closed-minded and I had a very narrow way of thinking. And I think that's just because of the way I was taught and the ideals and values that I grew up with and I was surrounded by, like with my parents. And so I was just curious about the things that I liked, and I kind of just left it at that. Throughout high school and probably like most of college, I was still in that kind of thinking. And I think it was just also me having freedom and just like wanting to do my own thing and getting curious about, I don't know, like the things you get curious about in high school and college and stuff like that. But then I just had a lot of family issues going on pretty much throughout college and the latter part of my high school experience that I was always kind of just like pushing away. And I'm lucky and I'm fortunate enough that I could do that. Like I had other family and people that were supporting me that, you know, I didn't really have to deal with it. But then that wasn't the case, as that happens when you become an adult. Like you have to deal with shit, and things become your responsibility that maybe you don't want to become your responsibility, and sometimes you have to face those unfortunate circumstances head on. And so that's what was basically happening my last year of undergrad. But simultaneously, I was also in undergrad. Like, I was, that last semester, bombarded with classes and final grades and exams and friends leaving and trying to figure out what I was gonna do with like the rest of my life, if I wanted to even pursue what I had been pursuing for the past 4 years. And so it was like all of these things kind of just like really kicking me down. And I'd always been the type of person to be strong and be the mediator and the one who is supporting you. Like, I always put myself in that position, whether it was with family or intimate partners or friendships. I was always that person that would listen, that would be willing to help and just like be the rock. And I just didn't have anyone at that point to be my rock, you know. And that's not even the case. Like, I did have rocks, but I think, well, looking back, I could see that I had rocks, but I don't think at the time I thought that I did. And I was also too proud to kind of let that go. And I was also embarrassed to be feeling so low and depressed and confused, and just like I just felt so many emotions at that time that I just didn't know what to do with those emotions. And I didn't feel like I had anyone to talk to about it. And there were so many people that I could have gone to. It felt like the worst thing I could have done. But it was the thing that I probably really needed to do. And so instead, I just started writing. I wrote everything, every single memory, every single thought, feeling, and that kind of had led me to that point. And that experience was painful, but it was also it was exactly what I needed. And it kind of put me in this place where I felt like I needed to change something. I needed to learn a new way of thinking, really. I can't even describe it. It was such a weird place in my life. After that, I had picked up my first self-help book, and I was just really, like, I felt like I related to so much of this particular book. It was Jen Sincero, which I still love. I read all her books. And just her story, her talking about when she was at such a low place and how she got to this place where she was really just like content and happy with her life and her work and her career and her friendships and what she surrounded herself with. And I thought, like, wow, like, what, like, I wonder how I could get there, or if I could get there. And then I read more and more and more, and I was definitely, I'm like the type of reader, or just like someone who, if I resonate with you, it will likely be based on a story. I'm a big story girl. So if you tell me your story and I resonate with that, I'm gonna be more willing to listen to your advice. Whereas someone who doesn't tell a story much, but will just say, like, you need to do this. If this is how you're feeling, you need to do this, and get up and do this work. And like, I don't want to hear that. Like, that is not, it's not the vibe. And some people like that. I'm just not that type of person. So I read more and more and more of those books with stories of how they drastically changed their situation. And then I heard this one story. It wasn't from a book. It was about these two brothers who had grown up in a broken home. One of them fell into addiction, and the other started his own company, became a multimillionaire, was super happy and successful. And it made me think about my own life and about a lot of people's lives. That even if you're in the same environment and you had the same experiences, let's put aside genetic markers and other things that you really can't control, and let's just focus on the things that we can control. If you grew up in the same environment, had the same circumstances, you still can come out with two very different outcomes. And the reason for that is because there are a lot of things that we don't think are based on choice. And this is something I learned throughout this process. When I started to realize that I needed to take back control. I needed to make a change. I needed to put in work. So I started to realize that at that point, I felt like I didn't have enough control in my life. I felt like things were just attacking me and I was becoming this victim. And I hated that feeling because I'm someone who really craves control. I need stability. And because I didn't have that control, I felt worthless and hopeless and, fell into that state, right? But then I realized how many things that I actually could control in my life. This might be a little controversial, but most people think that thoughts and emotions, we really can't control those. Right? We control our actions, our behaviors, the people we have in our life, the content we consume, things like that. But really, we do control our thoughts and emotions. First of all, an emotion is formed based on a thought, whether it's conscious or unconscious, right? And then we feel an emotion towards that thought. But the thoughts that we have, the conscious ones, we have absolute control over them. I purposely sat down and tried to think of things that I had to do today. Those are my thoughts. The unconscious thoughts, we don't have as much control over. We still do have control. And let me tell you why. Our unconscious thoughts are, those desires that we have, the fears, those are based on data that we are inputting, right? So everything that you watch, everything that you read, everything that you see on your phone or you hear a story of one of your friends telling, all of that data is in our mind, forming those unconscious thoughts. So when you have dreams about, something random, it's based on something you maybe heard, you maybe watched. So technically, we do have control over those thoughts, those unconscious ones. And that's kind of why I wanted to start consuming more of those things that I wouldn't have always had a liking towards. I wanted to see the other side. I think at that point I was kind of in this really polarized state where it was this way of thinking or that's it. That was the right way. It was my way or the highway. And it's really not the best way to live your life, unfortunately. So I really just wanted to figure out and see other people's point of view and how I can see things differently. Because again, going back to that one story of those two brothers, you can see something, you can experience something as the person next to you, that same thing, but you can have two completely different emotions or thoughts towards that experience. I've talked a little bit about this concept, I think in my last video or something about expectations, right? I set an expectation. If the expectation falls through, if someone doesn't meet that expectation, if I don't meet that expectation, I'm left feeling like I resent that person, or I'm left feeling like sad or angry or frustrated or whatever. And yet if I didn't set such a specific and high expectation for that particular person or for that particular event, I could have been content. I could have been happy even. And that's kind of the expectations we set within ourselves and our world. We're gonna mess up. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have these crazy and wild fears that we'll have to work through. But it's work. It takes work, and it takes really rewiring some of those thoughts and those values or ideas that you once had, whether it being from growing up or being in a certain environment for a particular time period. Sometimes it's not going to suit you. It's not going to benefit you in the long run, depending on where you want to go. And that brings me to my next point. We talked about when when we know that we should start working on ourselves, right? But how you put in that work with kind of like all those examples I just talked about, how you do it is you have to have a why. You have to have that desire to do so, because there are going to be days when you mess up. There are going to be days, even if today the same circumstances were there as they were yesterday, I might feel a completely different way about those circumstances. And that low might just want to make me fall back and forget it all and just go back to what I was doing. But if that desire, if that will to want to be better every day, to want to change, to push through, even though something's not going right in life, which is always the case, if that will and that desire to want to be better is not there and it's not strong enough, you're never going to do it. I think my situation might be very like specific, but I think that period, because I felt so low and so drastically different, like something like switched in my life, I set my expectation then. I set my will or my desire, whatever you want to call it, then. And I said, something has to change. I know things can be so much better. I know that I can give more and be more and do more and see more. And so because I thought that and I willed that, I guess, it pushed me through the times where it got even tougher after that. But it didn't seem like as low because I didn't have that thing like in the back pushing me. I didn't have that before. If you're feeling like you deserve more, if you want to be more and do more and be with the right people, if you envision a better life for yourself, you can absolutely have that. And you will do whatever it takes to get there if you want it enough. And I feel like that's like the answer to both of the questions that we had in the beginning of this video. When do you know? When you have that desire, when you have that will, when you really, really want it. And how do you do it? You have that will and you push through. The decisions that you make thereafter, once you have that, they'll align with whatever you want to get to. And it will start to make sense. Like you won't have the answers right away. You won't have the exact things that you need to do in place yet. But you'll know as it comes. But you just have to be patient and you have to be willing and you have to want it. So that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys got some use out of it as always, and I will see you next time. Bye.